In today's episode, sometimes trying to avoid paying for something will come back to bite you. The company appreciates your long and devoted service. Have a frying pan. Impatient lady tells me how to do my job, waits longer BC she has no idea how my job works. So let's get started. Sometimes trying to avoid paying for something will come back to bite you. I work at a large university with many colleges and departments. I had become sort of a de facto building manager for two of the buildings that my department had labs in just because I knew where everything was. One of the buildings was shared between 3 or 4 different departments. We moved in when the building was built, about 15 years ago. All of the departments had labs of some sort, but not all of them were wet labs with sinks, chemicals, analytical apparatus, etc. Ours originally had the most web labs, another was mostly computer equipment, and the other was mostly structural models and stuff. One of building amenities was a centralized source of deionized, DI, water. DI water is used in many analyses where the water must be very non-reactive and non-conductive. An outside company maintained and swapped out the resin exchange tanks that process the water. Because our department used about 90% of the DI water, we paid for the maintenance of the system, which probably ran a couple $1,000s a year. It wouldn't have been worth it to try to transfer $100 to $200 per year from the departments, and we had no issue with this. However, maintenance is important, because if untreated water is used in systems needing DI water, it can invalidate experiments and fall filters that can cost $500 and up. Fast forward 10 years. Some of our labs have moved to a different building, and another department, medical research related, moves into those labs. I don't know specifically what research they are doing, but there's a good probability that they are using DI water in the labs. DI usage goes up about 1/3 to 1/2 after they move in. I mentioned to our fiscal staff that we ought to try to get them to share maintenance costs, but no one pursues it. Fast forward another 2 to 3 years. Due to some internal politics and some mechanical failures, the hood ducts were corroded out. Our remaining labs were set to move to a remodeled building elsewhere on campus. About 1.5 years before the move-out date, the remodeling took a long time. I contact the other department's chairman and tell him that we will be leaving, so someone needs to take over the maintenance of the DI system, and that since our contract was due for renewal, this would be a good time to do it. He refers me to their fiscal head who, in no uncertain terms, tells me we're not interested. I try to impress upon him that we are not going to maintain a system in a building we are not even in, but he pays no attention. I mention this to our fiscal staff, but again, they don't pursue it. I try to contact them again 6 months before moving out. This time I push harder, but again the chair defers to the fiscal head, who assures me that they do not use any DI water in their labs, and they won't be taking it over or paying anything. I try to argue, but he's completely uninterested. What I haven't mentioned is that we were forced to move out by the college, so they were paying for the remodel in the other building. They continually underestimated the costs of the remodel. Just before our labs were going to move over there, they realized they hadn't costed in a new DI system. The quote from the DI company was about $10,000 to install a new system, and the college was already continually whining about cost overruns. I suddenly get an epiphany. If I could have grown a handlebar mustache, I would have twirled it. I asked the DI company, can we just move the existing system over to the new building? They basically say sure, no problem, that wouldn't be much more than a normal service call. Our staff is skeptical, but I show them my past emails where the other department had emphatically said they didn't use it. So, it's a go. The day comes, and they move the system over, surprisingly easily. I sit back, chuckling to myself, trying to figure out how long it'll be until we hear something. A week? 2 weeks? A month? I have no idea how often they use DI water. Well, I was wrong, I got an email the next day. A researcher from the other department contacts me over email. I didn't know any of their staff, and says he was told to ask me if there was a problem with the DI water in the building. I innocently explained to him that the system was moved. He blows up. That system is part of the building, you can't take it. I ask him if he had ever contributed to the maintenance of the system. He says no, that we had never asked. I send him all the previous correspondence where I had asked both his chair and fiscal head to take it over, and their claim that they didn't use it. But they didn't ask me, he says. At this point I shrug and say I'm sorry, but you'll need to speak to your chair about that. I was laughing so hard after that conversation, the lady in the next office came over to ask me if I was okay. I have never had such a pure sense of schadenfreude. Could we have moved the DI system back to the original building? Probably, but f*ck that, I gave them every chance to do the right thing, and they were greedy little bastards about it. Suck on them apples. The company appreciates your long and devoted service. Have a frying pan. Inspired by a recent post by someone cashing in their unused canteen allowance on leaving by bulk ordering wine and chocolate gift packs. I worked in the London office of a large, respected and well-known international, but US-based organization who liked to profess/believe/pretend they were a caring, sharing, benign and PC employer who truly cared about members of the corporate family and only had our best interests at heart while they shafted us. The usual. Years of pay freezes for us proles, job vacancies unfilled doubling our workload, essential equipment left obsolete, etc., while the bosses gave themselves increasingly huge bonuses, fancy titles and perks. They were particularly proud of their corporate employee service recognition awards scheme, which had its own dedicated catalog, and latterly website, where on achieving so many years of serfdom, a choice from a new cornucopia of appreciative gifts would be lavished upon you, with due ceremony along with a poorly mimeographed certificate of service. I failed to keep a hard copy, which I regret, but certain items we could select remain seared in my memory. 15 years service, for example, could be rewarded with a ring containing a 0.01 carat black diamond, aka coal. Another option at 25 years could be an orange cast iron skillet. You get the picture. Another was something only available to our US colleagues for whom there was no mandatory retirement. 60 years service could earn you the ultimate, a cheap Chinese-made 16-speed racing bicycle. Given that at an absolute minimum you'd have to be 76 to get this, the black joke was that you were encouraged to ride it in heavy traffic in order to rid the company of their pension obligations. Which brings me to our little collective attempt at malicious compliance. It took the company several years to cotton on, but when a home gymnasium setup strangely became available as a 25-year service award, it immediately became the go-to choice of all my worldwide colleagues. Why? Not for any desire for fitness, but because all these things had to be sourced and shipped from the States. Shipping for a crappy, but hugely bulky and heavy weight frame, dumbbells, and all the weights to Sydney, Delhi, Ulaanbaatar, or wherever probably cost the company at the very least 20 times the value of the item, not to mention the customs duties and import fees. I think this went on for about 5 years before the bean counters clocked it. Myself, I missed out, and had to settle for the orange frying pan to remind me how much they valued my 25 years of servitude. It's mounted on the wall for my grandchildren to revere. Impatient lady tells me how to do my job, waits longer BC, she has no idea how my job works. Obligatory apology for mobile formatting. This happened several years ago. I am a medical lab technician at an urgent care clinic. You know when you go to the doctor and they want you to pee in a cup and put it in a little door in the wall? Well, I'm the guy on the other side of the door. My job consists mainly of testing samples, but also occasionally collecting, drawing blood. At a certain point in the evening I'm alone, and doing all of the above with no extra help. This is usually fine, as patients tend to understand that I am one person, and will help them as soon as possible. Enter the lady. She had checked in for vaginal/STI concerns, happens multiple times a shift, NBD. She was also one of the last patients of the night, so I was alone. Typically what happens with these patients is the doctor will collect samples in the room, one of which is to check for routine non-ST stuff, yeast BV. Then they bring it to me to test, then send the patient over for a blood draw for the more serious stuff that we send out to a different lab for testing, syphilis, HIV, etc. They'll see the patient again after that, once I've put the result in for the routine test and drawn their blood. This is exactly what happened that night. I greet her and tell her it'll be a few minutes. I then go back to finish the routine test, so the time it takes me to draw her blood can also be used for the doctor to go over the routine results, get their plan together for her, and send her on her way. This speeds things up for her, not for me, as I have to wait for the blood to clot and spin in a centrifuge after I draw it, an extra 20 to 30 minutes or so before I can leave for the night. Well, it's been 3 minutes, and she sees me through the glass still looking into the microscope working on her test. She waves her hands to get my attention, looking very annoyed. I go out there to attempt to explain what I'm doing, but before I can get a word out she rudely exclaims that she wants her blood drawn now. I maliciously comply, leaving the result to dangle an extra 5 to 10 minutes in limbo, which can easily compound into much longer of a wait if the doctor is busy with something else. As I'm finishing the blood draw she asks how long before the test they collected in the room comes back. Here's my favorite part. I flatly tell her I was just about done with it. That look of realization that she had interrupted my helping her to demand that I help her was priceless. She just said oh, and then very quietly went back to the lobby to wait. It was one very rare night that I got to leave before the last patient. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.